everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Lei'd Back Life podcast, where we talk about how to love life, entrepreneurship, and improve daily. Joining me today, a phenomenal guest, General Counsel at Malbec, an adjunct professor at Albany Law School, and author of The Legal Tech Ecosystem, Contract Lifecycle Management for Dummies, and The Handbook of Legal Tech. Speaking regularly on AI and legal technology to audiences ranging from military organizations to law firms and corporate legal departments, Colin also is a columnist for today's General Counsel. His work focuses on helping legal professionals cut through the hype and adopt technology with clarity and confidence. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
And so I know you're big on AI, I'm big on AI, and I think all of us are going to have to be big on AI at some point. Or maybe that time has already passed. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think we all need to be aware of AI and accept it as something that is here and going to play a role in our lives if it's not already doing so.
I guess that's my question though. Like if it's not already doing so, are we too far behind the ball?
I wouldn't say you're too far behind the ball, but I think that it means that you will likely have a little more catching up to do than others. Um, and I say that because AI is kind of at this point where we're still in the very early days of it, even though it seems like it's been around for a while. It just has changed so rapidly. And because it's likely to continue changing rapidly, that means that we need to ourselves change and learn and grow and be comfortable with rapid change.
Well, and I think that's the most fascinating part is like AI is able to self-diagnose itself, edit itself, whatever, to make it grow that much faster that like this just becomes an exponential curve of ability. I don't, maybe that's not the right word.
Yeah, I mean, it's able to take interactions with humans and evolve based off of those interactions. But not evolve in a way that kind of the way like humans evolve, more in the way of just picking up on patterns and adapting to those patterns. Because at the end of the day, that's what AI really is. It's essentially a pattern recognition tool. And it's picking up on patterns it finds in what you provide to it.
Well, and I thought that was interesting. Dan Snurbush posted how like they had the different tests for AGI and how AI was doing so well, and then they like redid the test to try to be like novel pattern recognition, and it just sucked at it. Like it's really good at matching human patterns, but it can't like create new patterns
Right,
currently.
exactly. And I think that that points to not a limitation of AI per se, but a limitation of the current version of AI that is very much what everyone associates with AI, which are large language models, which are very reliant on training and on training data. Um, I don't think it's a reflection of AI more generally. It's just a reflection of the current kind of iteration of AI, which is so focused on data and recognizing patterns in existing data as opposed to recognizing patterns something that hasn't seen ever before.
Makes total sense. And I know like we're gonna dive into this from the life standpoint, but before that, I want to talk, from the work. Like talk to me a little bit about how you're using AI during the workday.
Yeah, so I'm using it in a lot of different ways, from providing essentially favorability reviews of different clauses, providing suggestions perhaps for how to negotiate different clauses or position, you know, how to draft an email or a comment to sort of better position my company in terms of a certain clause. I'm also using it to help kind of synthesize large amounts of information, format documents, potentially write sort of first initial drafts or outlines of things. I'm also using it to help kind of just consolidate different bits of information together. So there's a lot of different use cases for it. Um, I'm using a lot of both Malbec's proprietary AI as well as things like Claude Cowork, to help with that as well. And I've just started experimenting with the latest version of Google's Gemini AI model as well.
So I'm curious if you were like, let's say a new employee joined the company, you're responsible for at least some sort of training of them, and they've done nothing on AI yet. Where would you suggest someone start?
So my suggestion, quite simply, would be for them to just experiment and start interacting with our functionality, see how it operates, see how it works, and do the same with, say, Claude or ChatGPT or what have you. Not with any necessarily goal in mind, apart from just learning how it interacts, how it does what it does. And then as you learn more, then you can start being clearer with your intentions and see how well it reflects whatever your intended goal is. But you have to start somewhere. And rather than trying to kind of think of the perfect scenario to start with, it often just works out better. Just experiment and say, put together a little grocery list for me, or I'm trying to do this, figure this out for me, or, going on a trip, where should I go? What should I do given these parameters? Something like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I have yet to have it lead me the wrong way on those random questions. Like I had one where I was like, "Hey, make me a salad dressing. This is what's in the salad. This is what's in my fridge." And it was great. It was, it wasn't earth-shattering, but it was better than I would have come up with myself. Or, we did our spring break trip and we had like half a day to kill and we're like, "Hey, we're going from Death Valley to Vegas. What's something to stop at?" And it found this like ghost town with some weird sculptures in it that, was a nice 30-minute experience. Like it's funny to me how much I've enjoyed its random advice.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what you speak to are really great use cases for AI, because it just helps you kind of organize your thoughts a little bit, and helps you kind of stay focused on things, because the human brain is very likely to think of a lot of different things and try to, and it's often challenging to just focus on one thing or feel overwhelmed trying to think about that one thing. Like, for example, where a stop on your way from Death Valley to Vegas. And so I do think that AI can be very helpful in that sense. Which is why I mentioned kind of like the grocery list, or like the places to go when you're somewhere. Because it's so easy to get overwhelmed. Um, because of all the information that we could possibly have to deal with. And our brains have a difficult time handling an overwhelmingly large amount of information.
Well, and I love you use the word overwhelm. Like that my dream outcome of AI is it impacting that because you can go on TripAdvisor and there's 5,000 reviews, but if you tell AI, look, like these are the places I've liked in the past, it does such a better job of like culling those reviews down to your like hot take. I don't like New York style pizza. I get it. I don't like I want my sauce to not be like tomato soup. I want a thicker sauce, like the whole thing. And so like I think Yelp is really good for me except for that one. And so now I'm like, all right, AI, where's my kind of pizza? And it will be like, oh, try this place, try that place. And so, it's been good. I haven't found any like places I would rave about, but I found better pizza than going off of the
Oh,
norm.
yeah, absolutely. When we were in London recently, we wanted to find a place to kind of go out and eat, but we had kind of fairly specific requirements. Like, we didn't want it to be too formal. We also, given the area we're in, we weren't really wanting that type of food because there's too many options and we just weren't feeling it. And so I found it was actually a great place that suited everything we were looking for very quickly and not that far from where we were. So that was helpful. Um, I also share your view about pizza, which is a separate issue. But yeah, I want like an actual sauce on pizza, and I also don't want it to be super messy. Um, I don't know. I'm a little crazy about certain types of food. But regardless, when you have a specific goal in mind, AI can be very helpful about figuring out how to achieve that goal. Now, it's not always going to get it completely right, or you may
Yeah.
not like the answer, but it's like going to give you an answer that will help you get closer to what you're wanting to do.
So I'm curious, you know Mike Whalen, right?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so Mike wrote this article coming out of Tech Show about how like we keep saying this, we're not going to lose our jobs to AI, we're going to lose our jobs to the people who don't know AI will lose their jobs to those who will. But then like in Tech Show, you have all these like incredibly specific AI options that are replacing specific humans. So I'm curious like your perspective on that. Are we looking at, is the human who knows AI the one keeping the job? Is AI going to end up with fewer jobs overall? Like, what does that look like in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a big question. I generally take the view that AI is not going to completely replace you or your job per se. What AI is doing, has done, and will continue to do is, I think, redefine what jobs are and what individual tasks done in those jobs are and will be done by humans versus by machine. Um, with one caveat to that, meaning that if all you do is sort of the same thing day in, day out, that's very repeatable, very automatable. Um, I'm not sure if that's a word, but regardless, um,
I'm with you.
that,
I'm backing you on that one.
then yes, AI is likely going to replace that, mainly because it's just something that is so easily done over and over again the exact same way. Um, but I think what gets lost in this sort of replacement conversation is the fact that there is this need for judgment in using AI to do any type of job. And in addition to that, there is this need for human connection. Humans want to feel like they are connected to someone else and feel like they're dealing with someone else who is human. And so AI can't really do either one of those things. It can't replace judgment all the time, and it can't replace the human inherent connection that we feel almost sort of inherently. So, for those reasons, I think that we are a ways away from outright replacement of jobs by AI. That being said, those who are more aware and who are more fluent with AI will likely become more valuable and more valued as professionals going forward.
There comes a time in most firm owners' life where they're ready to make that switch, where it's no longer about survival. It's about how to thrive. It's about how to have the practice they've always dreamed of and the life that they've wanted to live forever. That's what I help people do. I've done it myself, and I've worked with dozens, if not hundreds, of other firms to help them implement similar systems. So if you're tired of doing everything and not knowing your numbers and having no idea where your next case will come from and worrying about how to make payroll, and you want to get over those things, click the link below and let's reach out to see how we can work together to help you achieve those goals.
Well, and look, it's a tool, right? It's how we use it. So one of the things that I do is I have my executive assistant on, I think end of day Thursday, beginning of day Friday, grabs like all of our recordings from meetings, drops it into a specific prompt for me, and then it gives me feedback on like, hey, person said X, you said Y, this would have been a better question for a client, this would have been a better, you waited too long, you didn't wait long enough for the answers. Like it just amazes me on the specifics of the feedback. And then like I've had clients say, "Hey, I've noticed you're sharper, you're more on point. You're forcing me to make better decisions of deadlines and how I'm going to change and all these things." And I'm like, it's AI, right? Like it was it telling it back to me that that was the next step was my clarity towards you all. And so I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. I think that having, one useful way for AI to help people is to help kind of think about objectively evaluating themselves. Like, how am I doing on this? What could be improved? Because we ourselves are inherently biased in a lot of different ways. And to cut through that, you need something that's truly objective to look back upon you and provide a review. And AI can do just that. So it can be very helpful in that way. Uh, and if you don't like what you're reading, that's probably a good thing because it's getting something that you're insecure about or unsure about, or something intrinsically you probably need to improve or could improve. You just aren't great at necessarily admitting it to yourself or actually working on it. So yeah, I do think that sort of that self-evaluative um, purpose can be very powerful when you have AI do it to some degree. That being said, you don't want to overly rely on it because AI is not like your therapist or your psychiatrist or what have you. But for kind of a basic evaluation of like, how did I do on this? Objectively, it's gonna do a decent job likely.
See, okay, so I kind of want to, I don't know if it's a pushback or an agreement, but like my
Or
biggest
both.
thing, or both, yeah, sure. So every time I go to the doctor's office now, they're always like, "Are you in the medical profession?" And I'm always like, "No," but I took the results that you gave me, I put them in ChatGPT, I asked it what I'm doing that already like, impacts my omega-3s are low. Great. So I'll eat more salmon and stuff and going through these things so that when I come to you, I'm coming to you with a much more specific question. Like I can get the random better WebMD answer off there and then go to the doctor and say, hey, look, I want you to check this number for me because I think it's from this case, like help me make sense, or am I not thinking this correctly? And I think like that's the part that we're struggling with. Like it's not the replacement of your own judgment, but it should help you get to a more specific question of a human expert.
Yes, so I think there's definitely that possibility. The caution I would have is that number one, AI can probably get some things wrong. Well, not probably will. And
Definitely.
two, um, it is only seeing things through the context that you provide it with.
Mm.
So, like for example, in the case of health, it's only seeing it through probably that one report or that one thing you provide it with. So your doctor probably will be able to provide a more thorough evaluation, but yes, we'll probably agree with you that perhaps you may want to look at this or that based off of the latest report, but may temper it with, well, but in the context of kind of your overall body chemistry, you might be doing okay or perhaps not great or what have you. So that's kind of, I think, the distinction there. But yes, it can often get you to ask more specific questions and or get you to kind of be more attuned to certain things. You just want to be careful about that just because of the context limitation I mentioned earlier.
Completely. Yeah. I go back to I think health's the easiest example. But on average, doctors spend like 17 minutes with their patients. And so how do you
Right.
maximize that, right? Like if 15 of those minutes are them explaining all of the acronyms to you, you've wasted the real
Yeah,
conversation.
right. Well, I mean, yeah, there's a lot to be said about the limited time that most doctors spend with patients. But regardless, yes, you do want to be productive in the time that you have in a doctor's appointment, um, especially if it comes to kind of you've had a series of tests and now you're going over the test results and things. And also, I would say, a lot of doctors, not all of them, but many are often not great at translating sort of medical terminology into everyman terminology, meaning that terminology you and I can understand without being like, okay, what the hell does that mean? What are you saying? Can you just tell me if I'm okay or not? You know,
Well, but I think same thing from legal. Imagine you're prepping a client for their deposition, and let's say, you can give them a chat bot to talk to as if it's the one questioning them, and then you can get them in the mindset of understanding how a deposition goes. And now you can sit down with them and have a real targeted conversation about their case, their history, their facts, instead of having to spend 30 minutes explaining to every single client the way a deposition works.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, it can help with kind of formulating strategy and or evaluating kind of responses to questions and ensure, same with like witness preparation, in a trial or something. And ensuring that they're going to respond in a way that will be beneficial, because, obviously, depending on what the trial is about, witnesses sometimes can go a little off the rails, not necessarily intentionally, but just because it's an emotional situation or what have you. So yeah, I do think that AI can help a lot with that as well. Which just points to kind of making, I think, humans better at their jobs in some ways, actually.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, and I think it's, like not that this is a 12-step process, but the first step is admitting you have a problem. So in this case, I think the first step is wanting to be better. and now figuring out that there's this tool that I think can make you better so much faster, or at least so much more targeted than in the past.
Yes, agreed. I think more intentional, more targeted is the right way to look at it. I think that there's been a lot written and said about increase in speed and efficiency, and I think that's part of it, but that's a small piece and missing, I think, the larger piece, which is working more intentionally and productively.
Well, and I go back to, we talked before this. I asked Colin if he wanted to talk about using AI for education or us educating ourselves on how to use AI. Like, how many classes did you take where 30% of the class was so easy for you, and then 30% of the class was really hard? It would have been so much better to have twice the time on the more difficult things. And I think now AI gives us that opportunity for that more focused, knowledge base or knowledge enhancement.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I wish I had AI back when I was taking geometry and trigonometry because both of which I couldn't stand and really hated um, and barely use these days. But yeah, definitely there are a lot of things in there that I would have been helpful for me to just have AI help run through with me to for me to better understand kind of what was going on and also what was the point.
Well, and my favorite story. So you'd mentioned, AI helping us understand it. My child turned 8 recently, and he'll like overhear some of the stuff I'm talking about. And so I was mentioning Parkinson's law, and he was like asking me questions. And so we got to the point where AI explained it to, I think he was 7 at the time. Like a fart is smellier in a smaller room. That was the 7-year-old interpretation of Parkinson's law. And I was like, that's hilarious because now it makes sense. If we have the external constraints, we can get our impact or our outcome to come in the same time frame. Just a very
Yeah, no,
funny.
that's pretty funny. But yeah, no, I mean AI can do a great job of explaining a complicated thing, the so that a 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old can understand it. Um, because I think sometimes adults have a difficult time translating things in ways that kids can understand, mainly because we have evolved and we've matured so that we have a difficult time kind of thinking back to how a kid would look at something.
Makes total sense. All right, so for anybody watching this, this comes out on Tuesday. This Friday, my newsletter is about the invisible work required in running your firm. And so obviously, I think, what we're talking about today, AI can do a great job removing some of that invisible work. You had mentioned earlier the things that people do that are super repetitive. AI can now do those better. What are some other ways you see AI removing administrative work or, pointless work from law firms?
Yeah. So, for example, it can evaluate kind of perhaps looking at bills and figuring out, perhaps better ways of billing or better ways of tracking what you're doing so you're billing for the right things. It can assist with perhaps intake, for example, of clients. And so that, that painful work of kind of getting people set up with your firm, it can help with that quite a bit. It can also, quite frankly, help with sending out like notices of like you've got a bill due or like I need this from you or what have you, kind of those reminder types of emails. Basically, all the sort of administrative things that you need to do with clients to ensure your firm is able to best help your clients, but also are time consuming and repetitive and not really kind of all that material, but are nevertheless important to do because you need to do them in order so that your firm can operate effectively.
Yeah, well, and I don't want to get super in depth into like free will, but ultimately there are things that make us do things that are easier or harder, right? And sometimes it's time of day. Like, for me, I think I'm more focused in the morning, might be more creative in the afternoon. So I'm imagining these like AI bill collection programs that are like, oh, if we send an email to Mrs. Jones at 3 o'clock, she will pay the bill, within the next hour. If we send a text to Mr. Smith at 9 a.m., he's not going to respond until noon over lunch. So if we change the times, like I'm just amazed at seeing this, the ability of it like agentically to track outcomes and then change the inputs of the AI on a case by case basis.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's one thing that's really a lot of AI models are great at is taking kind of that larger context into account and then appropriately responding by saying, you should send this at this time so that, you get a better response or what have you. Um, and for me, I know myself well enough that I'm typically most productive in the morning. So therefore, if I actually want to get something done, especially something that I don't want to have to do, but I need to do it, I can do it first thing when I get up in the morning. Because otherwise, if I just let it sit, I'm just not going to do it.
It's the what, eat the frog?
Yeah, it's right. It's and because I'm super productive in the morning, so if I've got something especially difficult to do, I'm gonna just get right down to it first thing when I get up.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I'm like you from that standpoint, but then I see the other person who's like, this is terrifying. I want to ease myself into it. Great, then ease yourself into it. But like this way, the system knows, and at some point it might know, hey, we're gonna schedule these things for Colin in, before 9 o'clock, schedule these things after 2 p.m. and be
Right,
totally
yeah,
different for somebody
the
else.
whole idea of scheduling becomes easier and more productive when you have AI help with that for sure. Um, I always kind of roll my eyes a little bit about those who want to ease themselves into the day because I'm like, well, how long are you easing yourself into the day exactly?
You could ease yourself into the day the entire day and then
Right.
be done. I'm hitting my stride at 4:59. I've got 1 minute
Yeah,
of
right,
focus for.
okay. Sure.
Anything before we dive into the life side of this? Anything else you want to cover from the work component of AI?
Not really, aside from just look, the fact of the matter is AI is here, so I think you would do yourselves a favor by experimenting with it and learning from it sooner rather than later.
I love that. All right, so last episode was my birthday episode about how to find fun and happiness in life. So I think that's a great segue for those of you that watched that episode. How do we use AI to find more fun and happiness in our everyday lives?
Yeah, so I love that question. And I would start with something that we've talked about earlier, which is just that use AI to handle those annoying administrative things like I want to do these things when I'm visiting this city, or I want to go do this. It will give you a plan so that you're spending less time worrying about what you're gonna be doing, and more time doing the things you want to be doing. Or if you need to go out and get groceries, where do I find these things when I'm at the store? And suppose I'm going to this store. It can give you a sense of where to find things. Because I, for one, hate grocery stores because I can never find a damn thing in them, and I find them really annoying. Um, so I would definitely be using AI for that. Or, look, I need to get from A to B. I don't want to spend too much time figuring out how to get there. What's the best route to take given this is what time of day I'm going and this is where I'm going and all of that. So it's all these things that kind of just having AI help you figure these things out so you're spending less time figuring out how to do something or how to get something or how to go somewhere and actually being there doing what you want to be doing. And I because again, I think humans spend a lot of time worrying about the how and the what and the where when they could be, I think, especially well these days, having AI figure a lot of that out for them so that they're able to kind of spend their energy having fun, living life the way they want to be living it.
Well, and I think I want to go back to what we talked about earlier. Like, that's you, that's me. There are things, if you find enjoyment in the wandering, don't have AI remove the sense of wander. Like, so for me, I like wandering around the grocery store. So I have a list, but I don't need, for you, it could probably plan out like go up this aisle, go down this aisle. These are the things in this order. Whereas, like, for me with exercise at the gym, it's like, hey, do this exercise, superset these two, do those. Like, that's what I want the time, I want to be as efficient as possible in those. There are other parts of life where I want to just meander around.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think, AI can help with just kind of better managing your time and um helping you kind of just spend less time being overwhelmed by figuring things out and figuring some things out for you so you can spend more time kind of just relaxing or doing whatever it is you want to be doing. Because look, and this is something that is top of mind for me due to a recent unexpected loss. But life is short, and life is poses unexpected challenges sometimes, and you can't prepare for them. But what you can do is make sure you're spending, not to be too hokey here, but spending your time wisely, given that it is limited and you don't know exactly how much time you have.
Absolutely, totally. Sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And I think that's like, I often think about like sitting on my deathbed. Am I going to regret whatever? And like, I'm never going to regret making it to all my kids' baseball games. I'm never going to regret, the fun time spent with people. I might regret staying in the office extra late, but then you have that pull of like, how do I afford, to make payroll and do this and do that? So I think like AI becomes really good as a tool on those things. How can I spend less time in the office and still make the same amount of money, bill more money, grow a larger team, like whatever the issue is that needs to be addressed by it, so that you have the time. Because like AI can't lift weights for me. AI can't eat healthier foods for me. AI can't spend quality time with my loved ones for me. So let's let it free up my time to do those things.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. I think sometimes we as professionals get lost in sort of like the professionalism at the expense of just realizing like what are we happy? Are we doing what we want to be
Mm,
doing in our lives? Um, and sometimes that's hard to answer because we're worried about, expenses or what have you. And we're just more concerned with kind of the minutia of our day. When I think it does bode well to uh when it bodes well to just sort of give ourselves some grace.
I agree. So do you, in terms of those things, like just the normal struggles in life, the slight tweaks and changes, the looking up and asking yourself, "Am I happy?" I think the way you phrased that I thought was great. Are you specifically carving out time for those things in your day-to-day life?
So I would say it's not a matter of like specifically carving out time so much as it is making sure that if I want to do something, I'm doing it. And I'm very lucky in the sense that I am able to do that for myself at this stage of my career and at this stage of life. But I am adamant upon making sure that I am um, doing what I want to be doing when I want to be doing it, and and going with it.
How do you accomplish that?
That is
Is
a good
it,
question. It mainly
thank
comes
you.
down to like just scheduling and also frankly having a job that lets me work from wherever. So if I want to go somewhere, I can actually go somewhere. And am I working sometimes when I'm there? A little bit, yes, but I'm still able to be in the present and be where I want to be, enjoying where I am.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that I've done is I've got two different colors on my calendar. I've got reds and blues. One, it's brand colors. Two, the red is the stuff that I can't move. So that's like my stop must happen. So for example, this podcast on my calendar, red, you committed to the time, I can't move it. But then before this, I was writing a newsletter, which is just me and, my Word doc and whatever else. So that's blue, and that's something that we can move. So if you had messaged us and said, "Hey, I need to come 30 minutes earlier," my team could just swap those two things. And so this way, from the how do I get the opportunity to do the things that I want? If a friend calls and says, "Hey, you want to join us for lunch in 20 minutes?" I can look and see, are the next things on my calendar movable, and try to keep as many things movable on my calendar as possible.
Got it. Yeah. I think that we all need to find ways to better better manage ourselves. And that comes from understanding how we work, how we operate, and how we work best. And then making accommodations for that. Sometimes I don't think we do that well enough sometimes. Because we're afraid to, maybe we don't want to take the time to do so. Maybe we just feel like we can't because we have to be a certain way for our job or whatever. And I I think that's missing the point. Like we're going to be most productive in our job if we're happy and also working in ways that work best for ourselves. And I don't think that often gets recognized enough.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the biggest issue with, well, I guess the two issues are one, what you mentioned, people don't think they can do it. But then two, I think it's people try this crazy, like, hey, tomorrow my life's going to be completely different. And I think that's just not going to be the case. I think the easier way, especially we're talking AI here, right? So at the end of the week, give yourself 15 minutes. What's the thing I did this week that I hated the most? And then ask AI, how could I automate it? How could I outsource this? How could I not have to do it? And then at the same token, like, what's the thing I did this week that I enjoyed the most, and how do I spend more time doing it? The more you get to those, like, what is it, Kaizen, those small steps towards continuous improvement. I think that's how
Hmm.
you make this work.
Yeah, it's right. I do think it comes down to figuring out we got to make this work some way or not, one way or another. So why not make it work the way that best we can, and how best we can make it work for ourselves. And again, I think this is just a like it coming from a place of just recent self-reflection, but I do think that it is important to remind ourselves of the fact that what are we actually doing in our life? Like, are we working to make others happy or working to make ourselves happy or both?
Well, and I think there are some times where we are working. I think both of those things have value. It's just making sure you're spending the right amount of time working for others and working for yourself.
Right, exactly. I agree with that completely. I think that there is a fair amount of sometimes what we think is balance is really not balance because we've lost sight of what actual balance is. Because it goes back to us not checking in with ourselves enough.
Well, and I think the crazy part of this is so, we I'm gonna say evolve as humans. I don't necessarily mean that in the Darwin evolution, but like you and I at one point had not gone to law school and then we learned that stuff and went into law and learned, so we evolved from that standpoint. And now with AI, I think you have this whole like second evolution to support you. And so like you mentioned Claude Cowork. Before Claude Cowork, I don't know. I still don't know how to code. But now, like, Claude knows how to code so many of these things and do a bunch of stuff with me and, all these connecting different programs instead of having to be reliant upon Zapier. Now it's like I can go in and tell AI to write me this specific stuff that stitches these things together that saves me 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, but then times, 30, 40 times a week becomes an immense time savings.
Yeah. Yeah, right. It kind of comes down to, I think, figuring out just what how we're doing things, whether that's the right way to do things, and whether it's actually working for ourselves in a way that is productive and focused on growth. Growth of ourselves and et cetera.
So, can you give me some examples of how you're using AI to accomplish those things or to help you accomplish those things?
Yeah. So for example, for me, creating I create a lot of content, but I need ways to help me think about how to organize that content and how to um, craft it. And not by creating the content for me, I do that myself, but more a matter of how to organize it, topics, potential way to cover, better ways of addressing topics, things like that. I use AI all the time for that sort of brainstorming, outlining types of things, and it helps me organize my thoughts because I have a lot of thoughts in my head. I have a lot of ideas, a lot of goals I have, and AI helps me kind of make sense of all of that and organizes it for me so I can focus more on the creation of the content as opposed to um, worrying about not just the creation but the how and the why and all of that. Uh, and it also helps me kind of just, if I am worried about something, I will sometimes just have it run through scenarios with me to help me kind of either calm my neurotic tendencies or anxieties about things or think about things in a more objective way. So, those are some examples of in which I use AI to kind of just help me manage the challenges of life in ways that are helpful without kind of like offloading sort of my own cognitive abilities.
Well, but I think that the one you mentioned first, in terms of organizing your thoughts, I think that's one of the most amazing uses. Going in here and either, dictating and just brain dumping or getting into a conversation with AI and just dumping the stuff out of your head to the AI. And then even if it's to then delegate that to another human, it becomes able to, translate your thoughts better for somebody else. And so it's still me, it's still my ideas, it's still what I think, but now I have this like artificial bridge to help somebody else understand it correctly to run with it better.
Yeah, right. So I think that's a great way of putting it. AI is really good, I think, at kind of reducing the noise and the complication we have in our own heads about things and pulling out the key pieces we should be paying attention to or should be thinking about and disregarding the rest of it. And the problem is for us humans, our brains aren't always great about separating kind of the emotions and the complications and sort of the noise from the facts. And that's not a flaw. I think that's just an inherent part of us and what makes us human and what makes us aware of ourselves.
Right.
So,
It's a feature,
um,
not a bug.
exactly. So, I do think that is a benefit of AI is helping make sense of, of kind of, well, of finding the signals amidst the noise.
Well, are you familiar with Steve Harvey's Project 300?
I've heard of it. I'm not super familiar with it.
Okay, so I had Jen Gore was on the podcast many months ago at this point and told me about it, and then I got all in. So it's 300 things you want to be, have, or do, and I've seen it in the next year or lifetime. So I did it from the lifetime standpoint, and I just dumped as much as I could. And the messed up part, Colin, I'm sitting there like wave a magic wand, anything that could exist in life, and I got through like 75 things. I was like, all right, well, I don't know what else. And so now you have to fill the other 225. And so I was like, all right, I'll break it down. I wanted to play disc golf in every state. So I broke it to like, I think I had 8 states left at that time. All right, I wanted to see the big five in Utah. Well, now they became the five specific parks, those things. And so after getting this list, and again, over probably 3 or 4 weeks of just dumping at different times into this list, I was like, well, now how do I do anything with this? So I was like, all right, AI, organize this for me. And so basically it gave me the list of, if I could just throw money and do it. Like my son and I want to go to a rage room. Great. We can pay the money. We can go. They're open all the time. All right, I want to go to the Masters. Well, the Masters is now you have to apply for the list. All right, so now like tell me when I need to apply to have the opportunity. And just the way that it broke down this crazy list for most of them into like what's the actionable step that can be taken is amazing. Like I could have done it on a case by case basis, but it did it in 57 seconds across 300 things. And now that gave me so much more clarity to have, a fun life, to do the things I actually want to do.
Right. And that's awesome. And that I think speaks to um kind of I think the a real benefit of AI tools is just kind of better ways of figuring out how to achieve the goals we want to achieve in life in a structured, manageable way. Um, and in ways perhaps that if we actually took the time, we could probably figure out, but it would take more time and we'd probably get frustrated halfway through, not actually, completely figure it out. Um, because we just were getting impatient. So, yeah, life is just one of those things where I think, you need to find ways to cut through the frustration and the impatience and the noise, and AI can help with that. And that 300 strategy you just spoke about seems like a smart way of structuring it as well.
Which I never would have come up with. Like it was so nice
Neither
for
would
AI to be
I.
like, hey, these are the buckets that make, the actionability of these are what makes the most sense towards you doing them. As we get towards the end, anything else you want to make sure we cover or talk about?
I think we've covered a lot of great topics, and I've really actually thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. So I appreciate it.
Me as well. The best part about a podcast, you find great guests and you get to have an amazing conversation with people. So
Yeah.
it makes the content creation job easier, as you touched on earlier. All right, so next week we've got Delisi Friday on. Delisi's got over 20 years of experience and the founder of First Call Friday, helping lawyers build referral networks that actually drive results. Inspired by her own trial lawyer father, and that's a tongue twister, trial lawyer father, she began mastering referral marketing at 14 and eventually scaled a personal injury firm from 7 to 8 figures through referrals alone. She's a former chief of staff to serial entrepreneur R. John Robbins, and she now shares her expertise as the host of the From Coffee to Cases podcast, teaching attorneys how to turn relationships into revenue. And I can tell you, she walks the walk. She's a fellow San Antonioan with me, so we've hung out in person. I've got to see this in action. It's going to be a really great chat next week. In the meantime, though, Colin, for anybody who's been listening for the last 50 minutes or so, what's the most important takeaway that we've covered? Something they can implement right now to start using AI to live the life that they want to live.
I would say figure out one thing that you're always doing that you're frustrated by, and that is time consuming and repeatable, and try to have AI help with that.
Well, and it amazes me that help a lot of times is, hey, I can code this for you and you no longer have to do this,
Exactly. Yep.
is the great answer. And other times it's like, hey, I can't help with this. You need to delegate it to somebody else. Here's a
But you don't
good
know unless you
system.
ask.
Right. No, I'm with you. It's fascinating. We're not going to take anything AI says as the end all be all, but it's a great thinking partner to walk through options you already considered and add in options you may not have considered and then make the ultimate decision.
Right.
Love it. All right. And so for people smart enough to want to pick your brain more, hear what you have to say, follow your journey, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Probably currently find me on LinkedIn, Colin S. Levy. I'm pretty visible there, so that's the best way to get in touch with me.
And Colin is incredibly visible on LinkedIn, but in such a human way. Like you talk about the cats, you get to see you traveling. Like you do such a good job being a human being through the internet.
I try to be.
Success. And I don't, maybe AI is doing all these other things so you get to be a human to all of us through the computer, but it definitely shows, man.
Well, I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us today, Colin. Thank you to everybody else who watched and joined. I hope you enjoy this week's newsletter on the invisible work running your firm, and we'll see you back here next week for an episode with Delisi. In the meantime, do what Colin said. Ask that one question, find that one thing, focus. That's how you can live the life you always wanted and how AI can help.